And today we have an opportunity to talk to a really intelligent Black woman by the name of Dr. Nicole Price. And Dr. Nicole Price is, she's an author, she's a businesswoman, she's a straight up boss out of KC not KCK, Kansas City, Missouri, not Kansas City, Kansas. I know the difference. And before I begin, I want to ask Dr. Price, how you doing today?
I'm fantastic. Thank you for asking. How are you?
Doing very well, very well. Now, as you guys come in, let me tell you a little bit about Nicole. I have known Dr. Price for about 12 years now, I think. And she is the author of a couple of books that everybody should check out. And I'm going to give you links where you can go check out her work. She's the author of a book called The Lively Paradox, Dangerous Indifference, and another book called The Wholly Educated Motherfucker. And so now Dangerous Indifference is coming out later. And I'll tell you guys about that and how you can find out more. And also the Wholly Educated MFer is actually available for free, from what I understand, on download. Now, Dr. Price, let's just jump in. And as I say hello, first, I hope it's okay. I want to say hi to everybody that's here. I see Tamu is here, Kalfani, Romel, Ma'at, Negro Jones, Terry Cobb. How you doing? Shout out the city you're from. Let us know what city you're from. So let's start with, this is the question I was asking today, Dr. Price, and I'll just dive right into it. You were talking to me about this word called empathy, and that maybe we need an empathy revolution. And you know what it made me think about was our country and how divided our country has become. So before I even dig into empathy and what the empathy revolution represents, stuff like that, I'd like to ask you, do you believe that our nation is more divided than it was, say, 10, 15 years ago? Do you think it's about the same? You think we've come together more? What are your thoughts?
Here's what I believe. I believe that our divisiveness has a microphone. So for all those areas where we come together, for all those times where we are engaged in community, those are not the things that people tend to share. And as we've shifted to more the social media being our way to get the news, to secure information, that's just not the kind of thing that gets a lot of attraction. And so therefore, it probably feels like we are more divided than we have ever been.
Okay. So it feels like we're more divided because the divisive voices are just louder. So it's not like we're really divided. It's more like we just appear to be. What do you, I mean, is that kind of what you're saying?
That's my perspective.
Okay.
I believe that there are far more people who are working together, coming together, experiencing solidarity between each other than we talk about. And I wish I could change what sells, but controversy sells.
Okay. So what about that? What about those studies that have come out? And I grabbed one here. I'm going to look at. I need to see exactly where it's from, but it's I think it's the United States Studies Center. I got to look and see how relevant that is. But there are studies that have come out that have actually said that the U.S. is more divided than it was even during the Civil War. And I'd be curious to know, anybody in the chat, if you've seen any studies like that. Yeah. And also, I'd like for everybody in the chat, feel free to answer that question I asked earlier, which is, do you think that America is more divided or less divided than before? I'm going to tell you, I kind of feel like we're more divided. I think that when you talk about connecting on a human level, if I voted for Biden and somebody else voted for Trump, and we know each other as human beings, I think that we can come together. But it almost seems like, as a country, though, when you have half the country kind of condemning the other half of the country, I don't know if this is just par for the course, but I don't like it. It doesn't feel comfortable.
Yeah, so I just want to clarify that you didn't ask me about our political affiliations, right? That's one aspect of difference where we probably are more divided than we ever have before. But when you consider all other types of difference, whether or not I'm living in the city and you're living in rural communities, I'm seeing people coming together around energy justice, environmental justice across lines, regardless of if you're in urban centers or if you're in rural communities, because they recognize that we have to come together. I also want to clarify, you didn't ask me how I feel. You asked me what I thought, right? So how I feel, I do feel like things are more divisive than they ever have been before. However, when I'm working, the people I'm working with are trying to build community. And when those people are trying to build community, I mean, we can share as much as we want about people trying to build community. It's not going to get a whole bunch of likes and shares. Divisiveness is what tends to get likes and shares.
And I think that's a good point. I went to dinner with a brother I respect named Tim Jackson out of Dallas, and my wife was I think he was mentioning something he wanted to do on social media, and my wife said, "Well, why don't you do it this way? It's more positive that way." And he said that doesn't work. He said positive stuff doesn't get a response on social media. He said you have to be negative, and I couldn't disagree with him because I could tell you. I know that I've gotten more traction when I've had somebody beefing with me or me, and if I beef back with them, and I just didn't like it. I said, no, you know what? I ain't fighting with nobody. This is stupid. But still, though, it's like there's something toxic about social media. It seems that while there are certainly benefits, I love the technology. I love the connection. There's whole economies built around social media. There's also these studies that talk about just the mental health effects of people getting together and just kind of duking it out, on their favorite platforms and stuff like that. What are your thoughts on that in terms of just, how the world's changing and how we can still, sort of deal with these changes and remain good people and be good to each other as opposed to some of the stuff that you see kind of happening around us?
Yeah, and so I do want to clarify that I have not, studied this and looked at evidence-based data or peer research around it. So, but what I will say is that I know that if we don't have a balanced set of information that we're viewing, it has the propensity to cause us to go into a state of depression. And so I've read research from therapists and psychologists that says, that dopamine hit that we get from watching video after video after video, especially if it's things where we're comparing our lives to something that is not real. So I think don't quote me on this, but I think it's something like we're 7 times more likely to share when we're on vacation, but no one shares when they're doing the dishes. But we certainly do the dishes far more than we go on vacation. And so if I'm on social media all day, it can feel like, well, dang, I haven't had a vacation. Something's wrong with my life. When that person who's posting about their vacation, that might be the only amounts of, they might have spent everything they had to be able to go on vacation, or maybe they didn't, but comparing is the thief of all joy. I'm sure you've heard that adage before.
Interesting. Okay. So I was looking at Patricia Reed's comment and I put it on the screen. She says, we're more divided because the demographics are changing in this country. Caucasian race is dwindling. They're scared of it. Social media and the old guard who run this country want the minority to rule the majority. Okay. That's an interesting point of view.
Yeah. But I tell you that when you consider some of the things that are starting to happen in the nation and the anger and vitriol and the book banning and those kinds of things, that does tend to happen when the racial demographics of the country start to shift. We start to think, people have a scarcity mindset. They think that if you gain, then I must lose. They do not think growth mindset in the way that there's enough sun to shine on everybody. And so therefore, as the demographics start to change, the stoking of fear, that's not new. That's been the strategy forever. And I think I saw a comment that when have Black people ever been united? And I will say that there is nothing wrong with Black people, except for we think there's something wrong with Black people. Every race of people has situations in which they do not work together. And I always challenge folks when you feel like that Black people can't unite, just look around and see what kind of Black people you're hanging around. And let's see if we can shift that, because in my corners, we get together and do lots of things. There's here in Kansas City, we have what's called a sister circle, and it's all women. We all contribute to this fund, and every year we bless a nonprofit run by Black women to be able to do whatever they want to do with the money. They do not have to report to us on how they use it. And what I'm excited about when I engage in those kinds of things is that I tend to have a more positive view of my people. And if we out here rooting for everybody that's Black, we need to have a positive view of our people. And if it's not there yet, help us get it. help us.
Okay. By the way, everybody, I'm speaking with Dr. Nicole Price. She is the author of a couple of books everybody should check out. One forthcoming book is called Dangerous Indifference, which we're going to get to in a second. The other book is called The Wholly Educated MFer. And I definitely want to ask you about that because I know everybody's going to be curious about that book. And if you haven't done this yet, if you could, please hit the thumbs up button, thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up, share, subscribe. And so, Dr. Price, let's dive into that. So let's start with some of the projects you're working on in terms of this work called empathy. Now, empathy is I think of empathy as the ability to kind of put yourself in somebody else's shoes. If you look up the definition of empathy on Google, it says the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. What does empathy mean to you, and why is empathy important enough to have a whole empathy revolution, as you call it?
Yeah, so not to get too technical, but the type of empathy that you just described is the cognitive or intellectual empathy. I am trying to understand things from your point of view. It is really hard to get in someone else's shoes, but if we listen well enough, then sometimes we can at least we can be better at understanding what another person is thinking, feeling, and believing. Does not mean we agree, but there are some other aspects of empathy that we don't talk about as much. Somatic empathy, like if I see you get punched in the face and I feel pain in my body, I jump. I intuitively, even just thinking about that, just kind of moves my body.
Yeah.
That is somatic empathy. I'm not the one who got hit, but I thought I felt what you were gonna feel. Somatic empathy is also incredibly important. And then there's affective empathy. If I see you cry, if I see you laugh, I laugh. If I see you cry, I cry. I can understand and feel the emotions you feel. That's affective empathy. And what I realized when I wrote the book Lively Paradox, and also when I wrote Dangerous Indifference, was that much of what I was asking people to do was going to be very difficult if people don't care. I was having a conversation with a billionaire, and his family's been on the billionaire list for decades. And he said to me, we were talking about creating a sense of belonging inside organizations. And he said, Nicole, I understand it intellectually. Help me understand it emotionally. In essence, what he's saying is, I don't need you to tell me why we need to do this. I understand why we need to do this. I do not care. Right. And so when I think part of the reason why we are so divided is because people don't even care to care. Like I could easily sit here and say, white people are scared about the changing demographics of this country. And so therefore, that's why they do X. But an empathetic stance says, what if I have been in power for the entirety of my life? And I know that the systems are set up against people who are not in power. What would I be feeling? And if from that lens, it tells me I would likely be afraid. And if someone is afraid, how do you engage with someone who is afraid? You can try to give them books and put them in trainings all you want. That's not how you deal with fear.
How do you deal with fear?
So one of the things that I like to talk about also is change and what gets people to change. We usually try to use facts and force to get people to change, but that has never worked. So what we have to do instead is reframe, help people think about what they think they know differently, improve relationship, which that you cannot do via social media. And so the book Change or Die suggests that you can hit people with all the facts and fear and force you want. And they many times will choose death. It's the reason why you say, oh, smoking will kill you, and people still smoke, Or you tell me meat is more likely to give me colon cancer and I still eat meat. Because those facts are not working. But then you can go so far as to say, okay, well, now let's say my health is declining and I'm afraid that I'm going to die. Many people still do not change. And so therefore, how can you reframe, create new experiences around people change the relationship they think they have with certain concepts. So what does that look like in practicality? You have to help people have more of a growth mindset rather than a scarcity mindset. And that's just not a principle that on which this country is founded. This country is founded on, I must take what you have. I must steal from you in order to have enough for me. But I just fundamentally believe that it does not have to be that way. We do not have to adopt those ideas.
Very interesting. Wow. Well, I think that's really interesting what you said about reframing. You know, I find that reframing, I always used it to help me kind of see things different, to feel better about a situation. You know, it helps me in my optimism. But you know, as I would speak to my therapist, which by the way, I think everybody should have a therapist.
Me too.
I'm a big believer that therapy can benefit anybody, especially given what we go through. We go through a lot as Black people. And I would see her reframing things in a certain way and challenging me to think about things differently. And you know, and it does work, because you're right. You know, you bombard people with a bunch of facts, or you try to brute force your way through it. It doesn't really work. And so I'd like to ask you this. Now you're working with some organizations to create what you referred to me. You've mentioned it as an empathy revolution, if I'm not mistaken. That you feel that empathy is one of the things that can really, for lack of a better phrase, maybe save this country, at least make the world a better place. I know you invest in a lot of time in this. Can you tell us about some of that work you're doing in Kansas City?
Yeah, I'm investing a lot of time and probably way too much money, but I really do vehemently believe in this, because hope is more than wishing. Hope is believing that tomorrow can be better than today, and that we have the power to make it so. And that we have the power to make it so part is where I think there's a beautiful intersection between me and your audience. Because I used to think empathy was for the soft, for the weak, that empathy made you, it meant that you were agreeing with people, that you were letting them off the hook. And my journey of empathy has not been a kind one. I got there the hard way. I find that when people have bouts of major disease, incredible loss, that you'll see that empathy will grow. However, on my journey, I've learned that empathy can be taught, and that you can learn to be more empathetic. So if I might just share one practice, if we try to listen to a news station where we completely disagree, knowing full well the goal is not for you to change your position. That's not the goal. The goal is to listen through the lens of, if I thought what they thought, I would probably be saying what they're saying. So you're listening, trying to understand another person's thoughts, trying to understand their lived experience. I maintain that part of the reason why we have not been able to get from under some of these oppressive systems is because we don't listen to understand. We create strategies, we come up with ideas based off of what we think, feel, and believe this power structure works like in this country, not because we've listened and paid attention. It's like if you listen to someone tell you exactly what they intend to do, and then you base your decisions off of what you would do, that's not empathetic, but it also isn't very smart. Empathy makes us smarter. I believe that it is the thing that is going to save us, because I believe that the cure to cancer is sitting in some dilapidated, underfunded school. And we're not going to fund them differently just because it's the morally right thing to do. We're only going to do so if we start to understand and care that the cure to cancer is sitting in some underfunded, dilapidated school.
When you said the cure to cancer sitting in an underfunded school, you mean like one of the children could grow up to? I mean, what do you mean by the cure of cancer is in an
Yeah, that's precisely what I mean. So if you think about what happened here in the United States in Reconstruction right after slavery, what we were able to build and do in terms of like the Harlem Renaissance, if we just think about the arts and music, Langston Hughes would have been on a plantation, right? right? All that he's brought to the world would have been not been realized. And it is just not smart business practice to have certain percentages of your, if you're thinking of people as resources, which I do not, but if you do, to have portions of your resources where you just aren't getting any kind of return on investment because you are choosing to be oppressive towards. And I think we get taught to believe certain principles, work hard, get educated, because they're told to us as principles. But we have very few principles here in the United States. What we more likely have are strategies. The strategies you change when it's not working for you. So what we do is because we take people for their word. Someone tells us something is a principle, you should get educated. Then we go, okay, let's get educated. And then what happens? When more Black and brown people are getting educated, then you start to see these loans where there's compounding interest every single day and folks can't get out from under them because we don't, it's not education that's the value. The value in this country is the almighty dollar. And once we understand that, how much money is being made in our communities off the fact that people are sick? Let's just talk about diabetes. How many dialysis clinics do you tend to see in most cities in this nation are segregated? How many dialysis clinics do you see in white parts of town? You don't. Who owns those dialysis clinics?
Not us.
Not us. But who's using those dialysis clinics? Us. And so why would that be? Except for that somebody is making a lot of money off of us being ill. And if you don't understand that, if you don't listen, if you were not paying attention, which is all empathy really is, pay attention. Pay attention to the emotions people have around their money. The only time oppressive systems in this country seem to care about anything is when their property is being damaged. Otherwise, you don't see much emotion.
Wow. Well, what do y'all think about that? That's heavy, right? Yeah, well, I see everybody in the chat loves what you're saying, Dr. Price. And so everybody, in case you don't know, I'm speaking with Dr. Nicole Price. She's the author of several books, a couple of which I'll mention. One is The Wholly Educated MFer, which you can actually download for free, the Audible audio version of the book at drnicoleprice.com. The URL's right there on the screen. Please support her. Go to her platform. She is a smart lady. I've worked with her for years, and I have a lot of respect for her knowledge. She's also coming out with another book called Dangerous Indifference, which I'm going to ask you about that in a second, Dr. Price. And I've been getting text buzzes telling me I had another meeting I was supposed to be at. So I don't have as much time as I'd like to have. But in terms of my last question, I'd like to ask you about this project, Dangerous Indifference, and what are the deliverables in your mind, like in terms of what you hope to accomplish with this project going forward? It sounds like it's a pretty big deal for you, and I'm rooting for you. So tell us more about the book and just everything you have going on there.
Yeah, so the book Dangerous Indifference is a book that I wrote for people who either own organizations or businesses or work within them. So and unless you're not inside an organization of any kind, your own or others, you won't like Dangerous Indifference. But I wrote it because we tend to focus our energy on the most hateful, on the loudest. Remember, I said that that's what sells. But what's chipping away at our power is the indifference. Because if you do nothing in this system, it all still works exactly as it was designed. And so because we're not always paying attention to the indifference, we're over here distracted by somebody who did some egregiously hateful thing. Well, everybody understands typically when something egregious and hateful is being done that we need to come out against it. There's an analogy I like to use: shark bites versus mosquito bites. If I get bitten by a shark and I do not die, there's going to be ambulances. There's going to be all these people who are going to come to my defense, of plenty of time helping me get care and taken care of. And I could probably have a beautiful career as a professional speaker because I was bitten by a shark. But mosquito bites. If I get bitten by a mosquito, and I said to you, Dr. Watkins, a mosquito bit me today, you might look at me like I have lost my mind, because you're like, ma'am, that's not very important. But every year on this globe, less than 10 people each year die from shark bites. Every year, because of malaria, West Nile, Zika, and other mosquito-borne illnesses, 1 million people die around the globe from mosquito bites. And so what I'm trying to tackle are the mosquito bites, the people who just sitting on the sidelines, not doing anything, completely indifferent. And that means I have to spark an empathy revolution. The title of the latest book that's coming out is actually called Spark the Heart. And it is the empathy revolution I am trying to start. It's coming out in April. It's a huge project that I'm working on with Forbes. But for now, Dangerous Indifference is the one that I'm saying, hey, listen, and I think it's available for free download on Kindle probably right now. But
I didn't know it was available now. I thought it was.
Oh yeah, it's available. It's available now. It's Spark the Heart that won't be available until April.
I'm sorry, I messed all that up.
It's hard to keep up with all of the books. But listen, if folks want in on the empathy revolution, they can either go to drnicoleprice.com, which you've got across the bottom of the screen, and just reach out, and we'll let you know what we have going on, because we can build our empathy muscle. And when people say, hey, we're going to start acting towards them the way they act towards us, to this I say, we are above that. We are above that. We do not need to adopt poor behaviors, poor thinking, low levels of consciousness. That's not who we are. That is not who we are. And that is not going, I do not believe, this is just Nicole's opinion, that is going to be our way out of the problems that we experience in this country. The problems we experience in this country are going to require us to understand each other better and be able to then act appropriately based on what we understand. All
right. So if everybody could take a minute and give a digital round of applause to Dr. Nicole Price. We got to cheer on our smart sisters in the community. And look at that, awesome Black woman, no twerking, no foolishness. She's actually using her brain in a wonderful way. And I really think that she should be as famous as any rapper in America, because Dr. Price has helped me personally. And I have the utmost respect for the great work that she does. And really the respect I gain for her, in case anybody wants to know, is not so much about the things we agree on, but how she handles the things we disagree on. I've always appreciated that. And so everybody, I hate the fact that I got to run so fast, because
it's all right. We can get on again some other time.
Yes, we will. So drnicoleprice.com, that is her website. If you could hit the thumbs up button before you go. And also, if you want to educate your kids on economics, we have some financial flashcards for Black children. Feel free to go take a look. They're financialflashcards.com. So everybody have a good night. God bless you. And thank you again, Dr. Price. And y'all have a wonderful day.
A pleasure.
Absolutely. The pleasure is all mine. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.